Hi everybody, this is Liam Martin again, and in today's video, we are going to talk about how to hire a virtual assistant. The 5 steps that we personally take in our companies to be able to hire a virtual assistant. Now, for those of you that don't know, a virtual assistant is basically somebody that kind of just helps you out with doing stuff, your own personal tasks, flights. My co-founder decides to have RVA MJ end up getting pillows. I mean, just anything you could possibly think of, a virtual assistant is responsible for doing. And it's a huge advantage if you know how to manage those people properly. If you don't know how to manage those people properly, it really sucks. So a lot of people that I talk to say they don't know how to actually find a virtual assistant, and once they actually get a virtual assistant, they don't have that much success with them. We've always had a lot of success with virtual assistants, and I think it's just because it's what we do for a living. We have a remote team, and also secondarily, in my opinion, probably a lot of those people don't really have the right processes in place to be able to adequately manage a remote assistant. Now, we're not going to get into the management part. What we're going to talk about is if you want to actually hire a virtual assistant, we're going to talk about the 5 steps that we use to be able to make that happen. So first, you need to actually find the platform to be able to hire a virtual assistant. And there are a ton of platforms out there to be able to hire virtual assistants. And you have to know the pros and cons of those different platforms so that you really know what the heck is going on and where you're putting your time and energy, and also how much each of these platforms costs. So some are free and some are really expensive. Some provide really high quality of candidates, and some you have to do all the work yourself. So the first one that I would take a look at is Upwork. So Upwork is the largest online platform for project-based work, and it was the result of a merger of 2 separate companies, Odesk and Elance. They merged, they went public, and we now have Upwork. And it is the largest database for virtual assistants. I would say overall the quality is probably at a mid-tier in comparison to other platforms that we've seen. And the way that their fees are structured is they usually take between 10 to 30% of that virtual assistant's salary. So if you're paying that virtual assistant $2,000 a month, they are probably taking, as I said, 10 to 30% of that amount of money. So it's quite expensive once you actually work up all those costs, which is why Upwork is generally focused on projects as opposed to long-term work engagements. But it's a great place to start. The platform is open, and it's a really effective place to kind of get your hands dirty on hiring remotely. Another honorable mention to that, which costs a lot less money, is a company called FlexJobs. So FlexJobs is in essence the same type of platform as Upwork. However, they're designed more for long-term work engagements, and instead of actually taking a percentage of that worker's salary, instead FlexJob charges you a certain amount to be able to put up your job posting and get access to their platform, which to me is actually a better way to be able to work with virtual assistants. Taking 10 to 30% of someone's salary over a year, eventually I'm not going to end up working with that person, but to be able to pay $50 or $100 for a job posting and then get candidates in that way, that's a lot better for me. So FlexJobs is really great, and it has that large breadth of workers that are really looking for long-term work engagements. The 2 other platforms that I would suggest that you check out, which are relatively expensive but have very high quality candidates in them, is We Work Remotely and Remote OK. So WeWorkRemotely.com, I believe, and RemoteOK.com are the 2 platforms. And the reason why these 2 platforms are great is it's just a job board, so you literally just post jobs, but everyone that's looking at those jobs is only interested in working remotely. So they don't actually have interest to work inside of a brick and mortar office. They're literally working directly with that, or they want to work remotely, and it's a lot more effective to be able to find candidates that want to work remotely than trying to train somebody who doesn't really know how to work remotely, and you've got to train them up on how to do that. And there are a nice amount of virtual assistants on those platforms. Generally also there's a lot of like high-end designers, developers, all that kind of stuff, but there are some really good virtual assistants. They're generally a little bit more expensive than on Upwork or on FlexJobs. However, the quality is higher, and you're not paying a percentage of the employee's salary to be able to hire those people. You're literally paying for the job postings. So what we personally do is we work almost exclusively now through We Work Remotely and Remote OK, but we have an HR and recruitment department that ends up working with us to be able to find those candidates. So it does require a little bit more work to be able to get up and running. So take that in consideration. If you don't have an HR department, if you don't have a recruiter, probably Upwork and FlexJobs is a better spot. Second stage that we implement is once we've actually done all of those things, we've identified what we're looking for and who we want to hire as a virtual assistant, we end up going and posting a job on our HR site, which you can actually check out at time-doctor.breezy.hr. So we use breezy.hr for all of our job postings. It's a pretty good website. It allows you to kind of put up a website about who you are, what your company culture is, and then the open applications on that website. And what we'll do is we'll put up a job spec on that site identifying all of the things that we want a virtual assistant to do with us. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but then we take that main URL and then we put that on websites like Remote OK and We Work Remotely. The reason why we do that is that way all of the applicants funnel through one singular place. Even if people email me privately saying, hey, I really want to be able to try to work for you, I say, cool, go and check out time-doctor.breezy.hr and go and apply through the application process there. So that way HR and recruitment has all of those candidates in one place and they can go through them very strategically. So the third thing is you actually need to find out what you're looking for in a virtual assistant. And in my opinion, a lot of people kind of get this wrong. So I've found that a lot of people are just saying, oh, well, I need somebody that's going to answer my phone calls or answer my emails or whatever it might be. And that's not anywhere near precise enough for what a virtual assistant really does. So the two variables that we look for are, number one, attention to detail. Actually, scratch that. Number one, we actually look for previous job experience. And then if they don't have previous job experience, which a lot of people don't have, then we focus on attention to detail. So previous job experience, it's been proven time and time again that that is the most useful point that you can have on a resume. Google has actually proven this in all of their quantitative hiring that they've done over the years, that hiring people that have previous job experience is the best way to be able to make sure that that employee is successful. And if we don't have that, then we focus on attention to detail. So as an example, we'll have a job post where we'll say, hey, you need to schedule a flight for Liam from Toronto to Manila, Philippines, and how would you actually do that? That would be an example of a test that we would implement. And the more details they would put in, usually that would mean that they have more attention to detail and that they're a better fit for the job. So usually we have pretty open-ended questions as it applies to that, and we just look for them to be able to see how much attention to detail they have inside of that particular task. So number 4, now that you have all of your candidates, you've found out the platform that you need to hire on, you've set up a job application, you've got a whole bunch of candidates that are in one particular database. The next step that you need to be able to implement is a test task. So that's the way that we shortlist all of our candidates. So we'll usually end up with like maybe 100, 200 candidates. We'll shortlist them down to 20 to 30 people, and then we'll provide them a test task. One that we do that usually ends up proving out more successful candidates than any other technique that we've implemented is what we like to call the confidence test. So what we'll do is we'll purposefully give them incorrect instructions inside of a test, and then we'll find out whether or not they're going to correct the mistake that we made. So perfect example is I'm testing designers, and I would give out instructions saying, here is what I would like you to do. I have a .ai image, an Adobe Illustrator image, and I want you to make these 7 changes to it. I want you to change this color from green to blue. I want you to move this component of this image to another part of the image, and I'd go through all of these different tasks, and then I'd say an attached is the image. But I wouldn't give them a .ai image, I wouldn't give them an editable image, I would give them a compressed image, like a .png, which you can't actually break apart the different components of that image. And the test is not to actually edit the image. They wouldn't be at that particular test if they didn't know how to edit images. The test is whether or not they can tell us that we made a mistake, that we didn't send them a editable source file, but instead we actually sent them a non-editable source file, because the non-editable source file will end up taking them 10 times the amount of time to actually figure out what the heck, how to make all of these changes, or they'll just have to completely recreate the image from scratch, which wastes everybody's time. So particularly in remote teams, we're looking for that type of confidence to make sure that they're catching us and telling us when we're doing something wrong. So that's one of those tests that we always implement, particularly with virtual assistants, to make sure that that if you're making a mistake, they're catching you on it and they're telling you, hey, you're making a mistake here. Here's what we need to do to be able to make sure that you're successful and I'm successful together. So once we have all those tests set up, usually we'll end up with about 6 candidates that could be the right fit. And one thing that we do that almost no one else does that I see in the industry is we usually hire at least 2 people for a 1-month trial. And the reason why we do that is when you look at the testing and you look at their resumes on paper, usually some people will look a lot better than others, but you can't really test that assumption without actually trying them out and working with them. So I always have this rule, which is I've got to work with you a little bit before I can really start to work with you. So we work with candidates, multiple candidates, for that 1-month trial, and then after that we end up choosing our singular candidate, and or we might just hire both candidates long term. It really depends. Most of the time we just hire one candidate, and then after that, that one candidate is on a 3-month semi-permanent placement. And then we have a final meeting finding out whether or not this person is the right fit for the team. And if they are, then they are permanent long-term workers with us. And a bonus tip on this one, if you really want to figure out how to measure that data more precisely, how long people are working, what they're doing, I highly suggest you try out Time Doctor. That's the company that I work for, and it allows you to measure very precisely what a virtual assistant might be doing and where they're spending their time. So it's definitely useful, particularly in the earlier parts of an engagement with a new worker, to find out whether or not they're being efficient at their job, particularly when they're working remotely. So that was it. That is 5 steps that we take on how to hire a virtual assistant. If you liked this video, give the video a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. If you have any other questions about how to hire a virtual assistant, please ask them down in the comments below. And if you have any other questions, you can ask them down there too. And if you really like this video, why don't you subscribe to this YouTube channel? We do a lot of videos on how to build and scale remote teams. It's pretty much all we talk about. So if you're interested in that, go check us out. Hit the subscribe button and then hit the little bell notification button so that way you actually get the videos to go into your inbox. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.